Hey, this is Mrs. Reichelt. In our next video, we're going to go ahead and talk about basically fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base balances. So this is basically our maintenance of homeostasis for the urinary system. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing is that the blood composition depends on three major factors. The first one is your diet, the next one is cellular metabolism, and then also urine output. So we'll talk about this a little bit, but your blood deals with what, hopefully you've heard of the saying, you are what you eat. So that's where the diet comes in. And then your cellular metabolism, meaning what types of nutrients are going in and what waste products are coming out of that. And then also urine output. All right, so your kidneys have four major roles in maintaining blood composition. So the first one is excretion. We've talked about this, I think, if you've watched some of the other videos, but basically the excretion are nitrogen-containing waste. Those were previously discussed, but those are going to be things like urea or uric acid, or eventually it'll become urine. So anything that has the ammonia, or the nitrogen bases in it. Okay, the kidneys also help to maintain water balance for the blood. So that means that it's going to reabsorb water that you need, and it'll get rid of all of the waste products that you don't need to have in your body. And then also it'll maintain electrolyte balance in the blood. So this is the balance of salts and ions and that sort of thing. And it also helps to ensure that your blood is the proper pH. So your kidneys really have a lot of functions in your body. So the distribution of body fluids, you have some fluid that's called the intracellular fluid, or the ICF. The ICF is the fluid that's actually inside of your cells, so it's on the inside. And then it's about 2/3 of your body fluid. And then the other ones are the extracellular fluid. I would say that these ones are probably most talked about. So the extracellular fluid are the fluids that are outside of your cells, and it includes your interstitial fluid as well as your blood plasma. All right, so next up here, what is the link between water and salts? So we know that salts are important. That's why, I don't know, when you work out, maybe you drink a Gatorade or something, and you know that those Gatorades are supposed to replenish your electrolyte balance, but how are these related? So let's go ahead and talk about that. So the solutes in your body include electrolytes such as sodium, potassium, and also calcium. Changes in your electrolyte balances causes water to move from one compartment to the other. So that basically means that water is going to follow where the salt is. There was several videos ago we've talked about hyper and hypotonic environments. So a hypotonic environment would be one that doesn't have a lot of concentration in it. So water is going to head towards the area of concentration. So replenishing your body of salts helps you to retain water inside of your cells. Okay, so basically this will alter your blood volume as well as your blood pressure, and it can also impair the activities of cells. So as your water is decreased or your salt levels are decreased, you're going to become dehydrated, which will impair your cellular activity. So in order to maintain a water balance, basically water intake must be equal to the water output. So that means that whatever fluid's coming in will be fluid going out as well. So sources for water intake includes your ingested food, because there's water there, and also in your fluids. Then water will be produced also from metabolic processes. If you watched the digestive system videos, we talked about how you start with C6H12O6 or glucose, and you add oxygen to that, and you ultimately release carbon dioxide and water. I guess I could balance this equation here. But this water that's being produced is not the same water that you drink in. It's metabolic water. So this would be an example of water that's produced metabolically. And then thirst is a mechanism that is the driving force for water intake. So that feeling of being thirsty is your metabolic way of saying, hey, we need, or not metabolic, but it's your biological way of saying that you need to intake some more fluids. When we maintain our water balance, basically your water goes in and out, and hopefully it stays equal, but water source for output includes the vaporization of water out of your lungs. So as you exhale, your trachea is a humid, we kind of talked about this in a couple of videos, I'm not sure if you watched them, but in the respiratory system, your lungs and your bronchi and your trachea and all of those structures in there help to humidify your air coming in and purify it. But because there's fluid there, or because it's humidifying, that means that there has to be some type of moisture. So you are going to lose some of that through vaporization out of your lungs. You'll lose water due to perspiration, and then some of your water will leave in the form of feces or fecal matter, and then also urine production. So your average intake per day has to do with beverages is about 60%, foods takes in about 30% of your water, metabolism, it makes up 10% of your water intake, and then your output of fluids, most of it is urine. Also, the insensible losses is about 28%, which is actually a pretty big percent. And then sweat and fecal matter make up some of that as well. So hopefully your maintenance of water balance is just whatever's going in has to come out as well. So the regulation of water absorption and electrolytes has to do with some hormones. So the first one is the antidiuretic hormone. We talked about this in the endocrine system, so if you were watching those videos, you probably recognize the antidiuretic hormone. So basically this prevents excessive water loss, and it causes the kidneys collecting ducts to absorb more water. And then a result is diabetes. Sometimes diabetes can occur when antidiuretic hormone is not released. This will lead to huge amount of urine output. And then a couple of other things here. So another hormone, aldosterone. Aldosterone regulates the sodium ion concentration in your ECF. And remember earlier, that's the extracellular fluid. So the sodium in the electrolyte is most responsible for the osmotic water. And then aldosterone basically promotes the reabsorption of sodium to help you retain your water. And remember, water follows salt. So if this was, again, I'll draw that diagram. If this is the salt that's inside of your blood, or we'll just say inside of your cells, water is going to follow that to help keep you hydrated. But if you're in a situation where most of your solute is not inside of your cells, let's say your solute is on the outside, it's not good for your body, because what happens is that water will leave your cells and cause you to be even more dehydrated. All right, and when we maintain the acid-base balance in the blood, your blood pH must remain about 7.35 and 7.45. If it's above that, it's alkalosis, and if it's below 7.35, that means you have acidosis. And then some physiological acidosis, it has to do with your pH being between 7.35 and 7. And most of your ions originate as byproducts through cellular metabolism. So we're basically talking about the pH system, and we talked about what it means to be an acid and a base, and acids are proton donors and bases are proton acceptors. So when we're looking at the urinary system, we're looking at a mixture of carbonic acid, and sodium bicarbonate. And basically, your carbonic acid is a weak acid that does not dissociate as much as a neutral or acidic solution. And then your bicarbonate reacts with strong acids to change them into weak acids. This basically acts as a buffer system. So we're trying to maintain an equilibrium of probably about 7.35 pH in your blood, but we do that using a buffer system. We're trying to weaken acids and weaken anything that's alkaline to help to maintain a constant pH of your body. And then the next step is your respiratory system has a lot of control over your acid-base balance. So we talked about this a little bit in the respiratory system, but basically your carbon dioxide in the blood is converted to bicarbonate ions, and it's transported through the plasma. Your bicarbonate ions and ultimately go back up to the respiratory system, and then at the alveoli they'll be exchanged, they'll turn back into carbon dioxide, and you'll get rid of that acid that way. So it'll increase the hydrogen ion concentration, which produces more carbonic acid. The excess hydrogen ions can be blown off meaning that you exhale them, and then respiratory rates can rise and fall depending on blood pH levels. Oh, and it looks like that's everything. So I hope you found that video helpful.